Food bloggers, hi, how are you today? Thank you so much for tuning in to the Eat Blog Talk podcast. This is the place for food bloggers to get information and inspiration to accelerate your blog's growth and ultimately help you to achieve your freedom, whether that's financial, personal, or professional. I'm Megan Porta. I have been a food blogger for 13 years, so I understand how isolating food blogging can be. I'm on a mission to motivate, inspire, and most importantly, let each and every food blogger, including you, know that you are heard and supported. Hey food bloggers, check out our new SEO Supercut, a bonus 15-minute episode capturing highlights from SEO episodes that we have recorded recently. Go to eatblogtalk.com/SEO Supercut to get access today. Every once in a while, don't you feel like you need just a good, deep conversation to stir up passion from within you, to help you be more consistent with the things you know you need to do, and to find the discipline and focus that you need? Well, if so, this conversation is it. Elan Gelfand, he is the podcast host over at Abundant Thinking. He joined me in this interview to talk about all of these things and more. I think it's great to talk about the nitty-gritty details of business, Pinterest, SEO, keyword research, and all that good stuff. But sometimes it's good to give attention to the things that are going to get us to success, which is focus, discipline, consistency, how to handle judgment from others, and how to stir up passion. I hope this conversation will be really insightful for you and motivational. I thoroughly enjoyed recording it. It is episode number 615, sponsored by RankIQ. Hey, we have a few spots available for the 2025 mastermind groups, and I want to give you a chance to grab one of them. One of the reasons this group just works so well is because when you invest in yourself and in your business in a really big way, you become more focused, dedicated, and serious about what you do. For more information and to apply for these groups, go to eatblogtalk.com/mastermind. Current member Lucy from Southern Food and Fun talks about that in this clip.
Anybody on the fence, I highly recommend the mastermind. It's expensive, but it's an investment in your business, an investment in yourself. And I feel like definitely for me, when you have skin in the game, you will put more into it. Like, I feel like I'm working harder because I'm paying this money for this mastermind. So I need to be present and focused and get as much out of it as I can. So that's definitely helpful to me. I highly recommend it.
Elan Gelfand started the podcast Abundant Thinking, where he talks about how to live a purposeful life and how to improve your mindset. Elan has spoken to some of the best coaches in the industry and has valuable insight on how to succeed and how to cultivate a bulletproof mindset. Elan, welcome to Eat Blog Talk. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, super excited to have you here because you love talking about mindset, and my listeners know I love talking about mindset as well, so I can't wait for this chat. But before we do that, do you have a fun fact to share with us about yourself?
Yes, I do. First of all, thank you for having me, Megan. I'm very excited for this opportunity. Fun fact about myself is in the future, in the next couple of years, I do want to write a book. I want it to be focused on mindset, and the whole goal of the book, although I haven't thought about it, from start to finish, it would be just helping people who might be a little bit lost or on the right track get back into the right place to help improve their mindset and put themselves in the right position for their lives.
That's good. Yes, definitely write that book. I think that could help a ton of people, right? Especially in business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. And then you do have a podcast. I would love for you to tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, so my podcast, it's called Abundant Thinking. The main, I would say, talking points of my podcast, I talk a lot about mindset. That's kind of where the name Abundant Thinking comes from. I wanted to create a platform where I'm able to help people think past, the broad topics and things that are maybe easier to grasp and start to think deeper about themselves and the places that they want to go in their lives. So as I previously mentioned, talk a lot about mindset. I talk about procrastination, discipline, consistency, and confidence as well. Also, something that I've been doing a lot more recently on my podcast is uploading episodes that are just quotes. So I'm a very big fan of quotes. And when I, whether it's reading something or I'm talking to a friend and something pops pops out at me, whether it be a quote or a thought, sometimes I'll formulate that into an episode and give my audience my opinion of what it means to me and how it could help them in their life.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That sounds right up my alley too. I'm a big quote fan, and I feel like every day at least once I read something that stands out and I'm like, I should like give this some thought or journal or talk about this, right? So that's such a great outlet for that. Love it.
100%. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
Cool. I can't wait to check out your podcast. Sounds like something that could benefit all of us. And then today we're just going to talk about kind of some of those topics you mentioned that fall under the umbrella of mindset. I love these. These are so important, not just for being a healthy human, but also being a really effective and successful entrepreneur, I think. So, yeah, let's just start with like one of the things you mentioned, I think, which is discipline. I think discipline is so important for food bloggers and other entrepreneurs. So, how do we stay focused on our goals, Elan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from my perspective, I would put discipline and staying focused in a different category, if that makes sense. So, I'll explain briefly. For me, discipline is doing the same thing over and over again, regardless of the outcomes that you might get or the environment that you're in. And staying focused is when you're actually in that environment, making sure that you're going to take the time, to do the thing. Because you can stay focused on something, but it doesn't mean you're going to be disciplined and do it again the next day, for example, right? So, to answer your question, how can people stay focused? I would say create the right environment. And I see this time and time again. I mean, I know even in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, he talks about the fact that you want to create the right environment for yourself. Now, it's easier said than done, right? Because a lot of people know what they should be doing, but might not necessarily like want to put them in that spot. I'll give you a good example. I'm a student right now, and even for me, sometimes it'll happen where I know I have to study, right? Or I know I have to do this thing, but it's like, oh, but do I want to review notes for 2.5 hours, right? Do I want to do this thing? So, a couple huge recommendations for me is when you're doing something, there's a little bit of, I guess, a split road, like a decision that you can make. So when I have something that I want to do, and this also falls into discipline as well. So we're gonna say I want to write my book, right? If I wanted to complete the first chapter, there's two ways that I put myself in the right environment. The first way is a goal-oriented goal, I'll say, kind of tricky name. And the second one is time-oriented. So goal-oriented means, okay, I'm gonna sit down and I'm going to write until I finish chapter one. Like that's what I'm gonna do no matter what happens. This is the goal as of right now. The other one, which is time-oriented, is okay, I might not finish chapter one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and write for an hour straight, not worried about how far I go, how good it is, just write. And one of my favorite parts about the time oriented, which I feel like I do more of, is you can adjust it to how, I guess your level of discipline. I think throughout my life, I've been able to improve my discipline and build it more because I know a version of myself 4 years ago would not be able to put in, 2 hours of work on something that I wouldn't want to do, but I can now. So it's something you can build up. And I urge people who are listening to this who might want to do something, whether it be a goal or an outcome, to try this method and slowly build up yourself as far as like, a time perspective. And what I have found that this does is it kind of eliminates all of the questions. I remember I used to be trying to do homework and I'd be like, I'm going to complete this problem and then we'll see what I'm going to do after that. Oh, I got a notification on my phone. I'm going to check that. But with this method, it's like you have your only goal in front of you, right? If you know you have to write this chapter, it's like, okay, I'm going to write this chapter and that's it. Or I guess I should say, or I'm going to do this for an hour and see how far I get. And the amount of work that you can get in a certain amount of time done is going to surprise a lot of you guys because we spend so much of our time half focused, half not, that you can't make sense of how much work you can really get done. Something that I do is I'll have like an alarm clock kind of, or I guess a clock app on my phone. And when I'm doing work, when I'm studying, when I'm doing something for my podcast, I will start the timer. And when I get distracted by something, I'll stop the timer. And then at the end of your, podcast session, study session, you can see, oh man, like I only like actually studied for an hour, but 2 hours have gone by. So you can get a grasp of how much work you've actually done. And as far as staying focused, it's hard to stay focused when there's a lot of things in your way. When you have a lot of limbic friction, that's what it's called. A lot of
Mm.
friction for you to not do the thing you're supposed to, right? So when I say creating the right environment, you just want to put yourself in the most ideal circumstance, an ideal situation. Okay, I got to study for 3 hours. What are some things that are going to stop me? Well, my phone's the first one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my phone in another room, or something that I recommend. I use an app called Opal. I don't make
Hmm.
money or anything off of it, but pretty much Opal's an app that allows you to block your apps if you like when you want to. And there's a premium version. Yeah, there's a premium version that I'm paying for, which is kind of like you literally can lock down your apps and no matter what, you can't get into them. So it's kind of like you have no other choice, which
I
I
love
love so
that
much.
so much. I think so many of us need that. That's so great.
Yeah, totally. And I've been using it for such a long time that it's like it's a no-brainer for me at this point. So, for
Yeah.
me in the situation, I'm like, okay, I got to study for 3 hours. I'm gonna boot up my Opal and I'm gonna make sure I can't get in these apps. And because I think a lot of people will say to themselves that they're going to put themselves in an ideal circumstance, but they know they're going to cheat. I'll give you guys a perfect
Yeah.
example. I used to put my phone, like my alarm clock, my phone, same thing, away from my bed, like the opposite side of the room, because people were saying, like, do that, you're going to just get out of bed and you might as well stay awake. But what I was doing is, I was waking up to my alarm, getting out of my bed, turning it off, and then going back. So
Yep.
so this way it just makes it easier for me with Opal that like I don't have another choice, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. So you look, okay, what else is going to distract me? Oh, if I have friends in my room, obviously I'm not going to get the work done. So go to another room, go to a library, go to somewhere you can actually focus better. I know for me, I am a very like context switching person. Like when I switch my context and I go somewhere new, it allows me to focus more. So sorry for that long answer, but I would say in
No,
order to
that's
stay focused,
there's so much good
create the right
stuff in
environment.
there. Yeah, and I like how you kind of divided focus from discipline because it is different. Like discipline is doing things over and over and focus is actually sitting down to do the thing. But together they create such a powerhouse like I don't know, movement, I guess, effort.
Totally.
Okay, so also I loved the goal oriented and the time oriented because I think people could probably work differently depending on just their personality. Like for me, time works really well. Like I can have a 3-hour block and just sit down and crank out a ton of work, but I can see where some people might be more goal oriented and just like I need to get this blog post written or this podcast episode recorded. So kind of whatever works best for them, do you think? Like where do people start with that if they want to build their discipline?
Right. I would definitely agree with you and say what works best for them. But the way to know what works best for you is trying different things. In my experience, I'm also, like I mentioned, more of a time person because I feel like I can get more stuff done.
Hmm.
If I tell myself that I'm going to get, you know, some script done and then I'm going to be done with whatever activity I'm doing, it won't take me as much time as if I set an actual time block. So I feel like the time block works best for me because I'm just able to get more stuff done. I would have thought that I would write one script in that time block, but in reality, I wrote two and a half, right? So I would say to anybody who might want to try this, see what works for you. Start with time, start with goal oriented. It's whatever you want to start with, just experiment with different things. And also, once you see, okay, maybe I like time a little bit more, try out different times and see a good middle point for you. Because I'm not gonna lie, I can't sit there for 4 hours and crank out work. Like I'll get exhausted, I'll get tired, and I'll probably get hungry as well. But like an hour and a half, 2 hours is a really good midpoint for me. And it's the point where I feel that I've gotten a lot of work done. I feel like I've succeeded. And I'm also a little bit tired to the point where, okay, a nice break would be very nice.
Yeah, I also love that you talked about the fact that you can improve your discipline. I hear a lot of people say, like, I'm undisciplined, I'm not a very disciplined person. And that drives me crazy because I think everyone can work on this and turn into a disciplined person and then increase it over time. So I love that you pointed that out too.
Yeah, and can I add something too? Sorry for interrupting you. I was gonna say that a lot of the episodes that I'll record, especially in the past, have been for a past version of me. And I'll even tell it to my
Mm.
friends too. That's one of the reasons I even started my podcast. I used to be quote unquote undisciplined. I never had confidence. I was never consistent. All of these things, which is why I feel like now that I've changed myself, I'm in a position to speak about it. But the number one thing is knowing that you can change it, because once you adopt the methodology that, oh, this is just who I am, I'm undisciplined, not only do you become pessimistic because you see other people who are better than you and you think that, oh, they're just lucky, or oh, they have it so good. But also, it completely affects your life. You start to go around with this attitude, right? You might have something you have to do, whether it be, we're going to say for a blog, for example, you're going to say, oh, I'm undisciplined. Why would I even start the blog? Because I know myself, I'm undisciplined. I'll do it one week, but I won't do it the other. But it's something you can build and actually maintain and turn into a complete powerhouse, which is why I loved when you mentioned that focus. I think focus short term turns into discipline long term if you get it long enough.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. Also, your Opal app, great suggestion, because I use the parental controls on my phone, but I'm going to be honest, sometimes I'm like, because you can ignore or ignore for 15 minutes or ignore for the day. Oh, it's so easy just to tap that. But with this Opal app, how stringent is it? Is it like it shuts everything down for a certain amount of time or what?
Yeah, so with the Opal app, you can select which apps you want to shut down. So for example, for me, I know my biggest like apps of consumption, I'll say, is Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube. So I shut those apps down no matter what. And then, so like I was talking about earlier, you have to test things out. Like I talked about with time-oriented goals and goal-oriented goals, you have to test out to see what works for you. I've been using Opal long enough that I realized when I block Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube, oh, there's this one app that I don't really use anymore, but since I can't use Instagram, I might as well use this. You know what I mean? So I'll block that one out too. It's very funny because it has completely exposed my
Yeah.
technological addiction completely. So to answer your question, you can choose the apps that you want to block out, and then there's different difficulty modes. That's what they call it. So there's a snooze one, which is the same thing as parental controls. And trust me, I've tried parental controls too. They don't work for me
Yeah.
either. I always do the ignore limit, 100%. Totally understand. Then I think there's like a focus one where you can't snooze right away, but you have to wait a certain amount of time. And then there's a deep focus, which is like, I even tell this to my friends, one of your relatives could be in a terrible situation trying
Yeah.
to reach out to you on an app that you blocked, and you're not going to know about it. But and that was one of the things that I used to be very scared about, because I think that's what a lot of people might think immediately when they hear about this whole idea of no matter what, you can't get into this app. But trust me, you will find a way around things. What I mean by that is, for example, my friends know to call me if it's anything important. So I shut
Yeah.
down Snapchat, right? I shut down all these things, and I don't worry, because if it's this much of an emergency, like they will find a way to reach out to me. And also, I'm usually not like the first person somebody will reach out to if there is something like that happening, right? So that's one thing I would use to discredit this idea, but it has never happened. I've been using this app for probably a year and a half, and never once have I, you know, like escaped my time. Like I'll set a timer from every day from 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Like all my apps are shut down, right? Never have I gone onto my phone after my timer and seen messages that say, Elan, oh my God, this is crazy. I can't believe you didn't return my call, all this. So
Yeah.
it's very reassuring.
We always worry, right? Like, oh, the world is going to fall apart. People are going to need me. There's going to be emergencies. But yeah, most likely you'll be just fine. Everyone will survive.
And also, I feel like I talk about this on my podcast too, and this might be a little bit of an extreme like take, but what I realized for myself is that like nobody really cares. Like I used to think, oh man, if I block my Snapchat, all these people's messages are going to be going down the drain. They're going to think I don't care about them. But, this might sound kind of bad, but when I go on Snapchat, like nobody's really reaching out to me, right? Like maybe a couple
Yeah,
people, but it's not an emergency. Nobody's dying. So it's like what I say on my podcast is nobody really cares about you like you think they do. And if they do, they know where to find you.
I know. It's like kind of, this is harsh, but like kind of get over yourself a little bit. Like you're not always important as you. This is a message for me lately that I've been kind of thinking over is like I put importance on so much. And so I've had to kind of start learning that not everything is as important as I think it is. And that's including myself. So yeah, just kind of like having that attitude in regards to everyone. And I don't know, just a good message all around.
Totally. And also, one more thing I'm going to say is kind of what's the alternative is a good way that I like to think about things. So it's like you're going to allow yourself to be distracted every single day just because you're going to wait for that one message that somebody has an emergency and they need you right away. And you're going to think about that every single day when you could be putting in, minutes or hours of deep work that would be so much more beneficial to you.
Yes, that's so true. And other people, right? You're benefiting others as well.
Totally.
Yeah, so much good stuff to think about there. Okay, I want to get to consistency because this is one of the things that I feel like I've been really good at. And consistency has been the reason for a lot of things I've succeeded at. Honestly, like doing that thing you need to do over and over and over, even when it feels like it's not working, is so crucial. So talk to us about consistency a little bit.
Yeah, so consistency, I also will put in the same bracket as discipline because consistency over a long period of time creates the discipline, kind of like you were talking about staying focused, which I love. Congratulations also on your amazing success with consistency because not just anybody can get it down.
It's hard.
Although it is very hard. And I'm going to say, although there isn't this magic like solution to consistency, one of the biggest things I recommend people, and it seems to work, is very short-term consistency. So if you have to do something, because when somebody has a goal or an objective they want to achieve, they start thinking very, very long time frames, right? So they're like, okay, I need to lose 40 pounds, for example. Okay, that means I got to go hit the gym every single day or maybe whatever, 5 to 6 times a week. And they think, oh man, 5 to 6 times a week, that's going to be for this week, next week, the week after that. And it starts to get so overwhelming. And this can apply in any situation possible, right? Jim, I'm talking about a podcast. When I started my podcast, I wasn't thinking about what it's going to be like 3 years in the future, 5 years, right? Because I'm like focusing on short term. So what I recommend is doing the thing you need to just for the day and only thinking about that. For example, if you need to go to the gym, don't worry about what muscle group you're going to hit tomorrow and the next week and how hard it might be. Just be like, okay, I'm just going to go today. And then from there, you're like, tomorrow doesn't matter. I'm just going today. I mean, the reality is tomorrow does matter, but you say this to yourself as a way to kind of discredit and make tomorrow seem easier. But then when tomorrow comes around, same thing. You're like, okay, when should I go to the gym? When should I do this thing? And again, it's easier said than done, but that's why I always preach this idea of start small. This has been one of the most life-changing things in my life, this ability to recognize that I don't have to start super high and try to build it up on the way there. And I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Huberman, but he even talks about this thing. It's called a habit slip compensation. So what it is people will, be doing their habits and slip up one day, right? So, okay, you need to go to the gym 5 times this week. What will happen is people will go 2 times that week, and then on the third day, they'll miss out. So then on the fourth day, they'll think to themselves, okay, well, I missed yesterday, so now I have to do 2 workouts in one day. And what ends up happening is there's a whole graph you can search this up with, but the probability that you stay on that consistent pattern lowers because the day that you do all this extra work becomes your baseline. And then the next day you feel like you did so much the previous day that you don't want to do anything anymore. And I'm going to bring this back around to what I was talking about, for example, for the gym, even though that was my example, is the fact that when you're doing it, start small rather than starting big, because if you start big, then you have to maintain that. And then if you do anything that's lower than this big thing, right? For example, okay, I want to lift for 2 hours every day. Imagine you set that as your goal. It's super high and, in my opinion, unachievable for people that are just starting. So you set this habit and then the next day you work out for an hour and a half, right? It's lower than the 2 hours that you wanted. So then the next day you're like, oh, well, I missed the 30 minutes yesterday, so I might as well do more today. And it creates this inconsistent pattern. If you start small, you only there's no more going down if it's the smallest thing. And then you slowly work your way up and you get used to the quote unquote workload or the amount that you need to lift in order to achieve your goal.
Let's take a really quick break, friends, to chat about RankIQ. RankIQ is a powerful keyword research tool made just for bloggers. You have heard me talk about this keyword research tool before, and I'm going to keep talking about it because it works. I have seen steady organic growth on my food blog for the past 2.5 years, and the top reason for that is because I have prioritized running all of my content through this tool. Here's why RankIQ works. Number one, RankIQ provides great ideas about new articles to write and ways to rewrite existing content. I always find ideas that I never would have found on my own. Two, all of the keywords in the database are handpicked, so you won't find keywords in the tool that do not have the potential to rank well. Three, the RankIQ optimizer is my favorite optimizer I've ever used. It provides a comprehensive list of words and phrases that could help each post rank. And four, the keywords you find are low competition keywords with high search volume. I have found that the lower you go with these numbers, the more likely you will shoot up toward the top of Google, and it does not matter what your domain authority is. Check it out for yourself by going to rankiq.com. Now back to the episode. It's like James Clear's whole basis of his book, basically Atomic Habits, right?
Right.
The whole, he uses the gym analogy too in his book where some guy he knew just started going to the gym for 5 minutes. Wasn't he sitting in the parking lot or something? I mean, he literally just went to sit in the parking lot and started there because you can only go up from there. So then he did that until he walked into the building, and then he would, I don't know, it was something like a 2-minute workout, and then he would just keep building. Because that way you don't feel like you're a loser. If you start big, you go in and you do this whole weight routine and cardio, and then the next day you just work out for 2 minutes, you're like, oh, well, I suck, right? So I love that concept of building slowly over time just so you can sustain it.
Totally. And this even goes back to the discipline when I said creating the right environment, because half of the battle to working out is just showing up. And it's so much, it's so hard to think to yourself, okay, I got to drive to the gym and then I have to do this thing that I don't like. And I've done this for myself too in other contexts. But if you, exactly what you're talking about, actually, I don't remember reading that part in the book, but that's awesome. If you put yourself in that situation, it's like, well, now are you just going to go lift because you're already here, or are you going to go home? And guess what? Some people might go home, but you put yourself in that situation, so it makes it easier to do the right thing. I think that's a big basis of what I talk about, just this idea of putting yourself in the right position to do the right thing. If you block all your apps on Opal, you're eliminating your chances of getting distracted by social media. So you're putting yourself in a good situation to succeed in what you're doing if social media is the number one, cause of your distraction.
Yeah, set yourself up for success. For me, it's email. I have to close my email when I want to get stuff done. And I think it's probably email, social media, I don't know, family, a messy environment. What are some other things that could hang people up, do you think?
Yeah, literally anything. Email for sure, because email, I think there's two different sides of an email. It's the fact that you're always going to get emails, and the fact that I think emails make people feel more productive than they actually are, if that makes sense. And that's nothing against you, but I even heard this really cool idea yesterday. I forgot who it was from, but the guy, he said, when you're going to be in your grave, you're still going to have emails coming into your inbox, right? So he's kind of saying, they're always going to be coming in. They're always going to be a distraction. And although emails are very, very important because, when you're working, that is kind of your main platform. I think a lot of people will tell themselves that they're doing this thing that's productive when it really isn't. So a good question to ask yourself, and Chris Williamson, he has a podcast, Modern Wisdom. He talks about this all the time. He says, what are the things that I know I should be doing but aren't? And what are the things that I think are productive but aren't?
Ooh, that's really good. Yeah, I like that. I mean, we can get really deep with that, but I think
Totally.
just like we've both kind of said, not overthinking, not putting too much importance on things. The emails are still going to be coming in after you die. When you go on vacation, they're always going to be there. So yeah, just to not overthink things like that. Just shut it down and take it out of your periphery so you can actually get some work done. It's not like we have to work all day. Just give yourself a little bit of time to focus and do that consistent thing over and over.
Right.
How important do you think consistency is? As far as discipline is really important, focus is really important, and consistency, would you be able to order those?
Yeah, it's an interesting order because I think they're different time frames, right? Like I was talking about, I think staying focused is very short term, but then it creates a longer term. So staying focused turns into consistency in a way if you keep doing it over and over, and then the consistency leads to discipline. However, if I am to rank them, I think before I would think discipline's the number one thing, but if you're able to stay focused on something, I think that's what creates a discipline. So I would say staying focused is the number one thing. And even Alex Hermosi talks about this. Not sure if you know who Alex Hermosi is, but
Mm-mm.
he says he's a big business guy. He's super smart and I mean, easy for me to say, right? But he talks about this idea that your time and your focus is the thing that's going to get you to where you want to go. He says you could be the smartest guy in the world, but if you don't put your time into the right things
Mm,
and the things that are going to benefit you, you won't get anywhere. So I'm going to say staying focused would be number one. And then consistency would be number two and discipline number three. And that's not to say discipline's not important. I'm just saying in
yeah.
this chart, because when you're staying focused for long periods of time, you're becoming consistent. So consistency and discipline can't be the most important because they're the product of staying focused.
Ooh, yeah, that's really good. And how many people do you know? I know so many people who are so smart. They have so much to offer. They have great ideas. They are just filled with potential and awesomeness, but then they lack some of these key things and they don't take forward, they don't take action, they don't move in a forward direction. And it's so hard to watch that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Totally. And even one of my best friends, he's a little bit like this, and it is very difficult because you can only, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? You could only push this person far enough to the point where it's like, okay, it's up to you, right? You can't hold their hand the entire way, and you can help them think about things differently. You can tell them about possibilities, maybe what to get into, how to do this thing, but at the end of the day, it's up to them. And that's why I talk about staying focused, discipline all the time, because that's what separates a person who is very smart and has a lot of potential to the person who actually gets that success and achieves those big heights.
Yeah, so deep. One last thing I want to talk to you about is judgment, because I know in our space, there's a lot of competition. We worry about what people are thinking, what other people are doing, and that can really affect the trajectory of our business and our mindset. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm so happy you asked that. I love the topic of judgment so much. I could just keep talking about it. Am I allowed to swear?
Sure, go for it.
So there's a quote, Chris Williamson says it. It goes like this. It says, "You don't get shit on from above." And what it means is people who are doing better than you don't have time to think about you or scrutinize you for the things that you're doing.
Mm,
Now, how could this apply? A lot of times we're so worried about what people think, and you're actually going to really like my quote when I share it, but a lot of times we're so worried about what people think when, first of all, it's not there. But if somebody is judging you, you can be almost certain that they're not doing better than you. Because I know for me personally, and I'm very adamant about this, when I have people around me that are trying to do something for themselves and might be getting into a field that I know or I'm familiar with, or even, I talk a lot about mindset. So I like to think that I'm able to help my friends and people around me kind of think about things differently. So when people are under me and trying to get to the point where I'm at, not to, pedestalize me at all, but I'm just saying like I've spent more time in this area. So I
yeah.
feel like I know a little bit more, right? So as humbly as possible. And my friends might be just starting in this thing and they might not be too sure of themselves. So I will help them. The people that are doing not the people who don't have as much experience as me and they're not doing as well as me, I am more than happy to help. And I always find myself in the situation that like, hey, if you need help, let me know. The amount of people around me that have started podcasts or have tried to start podcasts is crazy. And I
Yeah.
am always trying to help them out. Now, the execution isn't always there. The consistency isn't either. Like these people don't always hold up to their goals and their values, but nonetheless, I am so willing to help them because I know what it's like to start and not have anybody there that I want to speed up the process for them. Now, somebody on the other side, right, who sees somebody's doing good for themselves and he says, "Oh, dude, you're gonna do a podcast? Like, what are you talking
Mm.
about?" Those people are never doing better than you because they're envious of you and they're always looking at the things you're doing. I remember when I first started my podcast, this one guy, he said, I told him I have a podcast, and he said, "Oh, you have a podcast? What are you, 50 years old?" And I remember thinking about that. Yeah, yeah. And I remember thinking about that, and I was like, I was like, it kind of hurt because it's like, I'm putting in so much work and I'm putting in all this effort. And for this person who doesn't even know anything about me to say that, it's kind of offensive. So I remember thinking about that and being like, wait, this person, not only does he know nothing about me, but he's not doing good for himself. He's not a happy person. And it's actually gotten me to the point where when people judge me, I genuinely feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Like I look at them and I'm like, wow, what is this guy going through in his life for him to want to put me down and put me in this situation? And that's something that I personally never understand because I'm always so adamant about helping people and making sure that,
Hmm.
hey, if I can even throw in a little pointer there, I'll do it. Even if I don't know the person, right? I'll be like, hey, that's really cool that you're doing that. Can I recommend something, right? I'm not going to go to them and be like, dude, why are you starting that thing? And it's interesting because I feel like I've made so many more friendships by just being open to help people rather than looking at it and be like, dude, why are you doing that thing, right? So that's my favorite quote ever. You don't get shit on from above. And that's the number one thing I think of. On my podcast, I talk about something that I refer to as defenses. So when I'm put in a situation, the second somebody makes fun of me, I instantly think of that quote and it completely disarms
Mm.
any emotions I have because I remember I used to be so scared of what people think, and I would walk around and be like, "Oh my God, what if like this person knows? He'd think it's weird that I'm doing this podcast or the things I'm talking about." But now I'm in a situation where I know the second somebody makes fun of me, I'm like, "Dang, I kind of feel bad for that guy."
Yeah. That's such a good perspective. I love that quote and just the meaning behind it. And the stupid judgment that person made to you, like, first of all, what's wrong with being 50? And like, what a stupid thing to say. People say the weirdest, dumbest things when they are jealous or envious or hurt, right? Like, okay, so what if I was 50? Like, what is that supposed to hurt me? But yeah, just recognizing that people are coming from a place of insecurity, probably. And I love your perspective of just being kind of like sad for them. Like, what could they be going through? Or sympathetic, I should say. Like, what are they going through to make them feel like they need to be jealous or say weird things to me? I think we can all relate to that. So I just love your perspective. It's a great one.
Yeah, and also, people like I kind of think about the fact that like let me live my life and I'll let you live yours. Don't worry about me, right? People are
Yeah.
so kind of like and I get kind of passionate about this too because I remember going through all this stuff and it's like it's so hard and it's hurtful when you're doing all these things and putting in so much time and effort just for people to make fun of you. But I think the threshold that I passed is just this idea that the people that are saying these hurtful things are not happy themselves. It's like, why would you ever say that? Right. And also, it's funny you said that. Yeah. First of all, what's wrong with being 50? But also, when people try to apply themselves, people make fun of it because it might not be something that everybody's doing. I don't know that many people have a podcast, but I bet you if I did something that was more popular with people, I would have people's approval, but I wouldn't have mine. But this way,
Oh,
when I do
yeah.
a podcast, something that I really want to do, it's the other way around. I have my approval, but I might not have everybody else's. But me having my approval will be infinitely times more important than having other people's because I'm with other people 1% of the time, but I'm with myself 99%. So I would rather know internally that I do this thing that I'm proud of, and then every now and then have to deal with this idea that, oh, people might not approve of the things that I do, compared to me having to wake up and thinking, oh, I'm doing something for other people and trying to impress them when I don't want to do that thing to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. You need to make yourself happy and find your own way, and pleasing others is definitely not that way. Do you ever come across the judgment that's more subtle? Like, I get this feeling, like, I'm pretty intuitive, I think, with people, and I get this feeling sometimes. It's not something anyone says to me. It's just a feeling like they are coming from a lesser place. And your quote applies here too. Just like I don't feel like they're high achievers, high quality people. Do you know what I mean? And I try to stay away from that as well. But it's more of an unspoken thing that I can just feel. Do you ever get that?
Yeah, totally. And if I'm understanding you correctly, are you just saying people being passive aggressive, like kind of like poking at you?
A passive about it, not necessarily poking, but just a feeling. Like I sometimes feel like people don't want anything to do with me or they don't like me. You know when somebody doesn't like you, and just that feeling like there's no reason why this person shouldn't like me. So I try to stay away from that vibe, if that makes sense.
Totally. I think that's awesome. I'm very happy for you that you do that because a lot of people wouldn't do that. And they think, oh, this person's around me. I have somebody. And just because he's making fun of me, like, it's okay. I'll deal with it. But I have definitely experienced this before. And the thing that I do, I don't know if you'd consider it extreme, but I just don't hang around those people.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing ever because when you are able to surround yourself with people who are like you and you actually feel safe with, you're able to collaborate on things together, talk freely about the thing that you're doing. Because I've had friends that I've talked about things I'm passionate with, and you can tell they're like, okay,
Yeah.
like I guess that's cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would say limiting the amount of time you spent with those people. And if you want to be extreme about it, you can cut them off. But I know even for myself, like I can't always do that if I know that I'm always going to be around this person. So just limiting the interactions I have with them and knowing, okay, when I talk to this person, this is what they're going to say, this is what they're going to do. And again, feeling kind of bad for them because I think the people that lash out at you and they're just like, oh, that's so stupid what you're doing is one thing. But when people are passive about it and it's like exactly what you said, you have this feeling, this intuition that they're poking at you. That's when it's like, okay, they want to be slick about it and give you the impression that, okay, they don't approve of this thing, but they're not going to directly say it to your face because they know that you're going to have a problem with it.
Yeah, that is exactly it. It's like that whole concept of when you walk into a room and you want people to look excited to see you and to be receptive, like with body language and all of that. I love that feeling. When I come into a room, my boys, my husband, I know they want me to be there just by the way they're looking at me. So when you go into a room and you just have that feeling like people don't want you there for whatever their reason is, you don't want to be there and you shouldn't have to put yourself there. So that's kind of, yeah, like what I'm getting at. I'm at this point in my life, I am almost 50, so your friend can make fun of me. I just feel like I don't need to put up with that. I want to feel loved and valued, and I think everyone should hold those standards for themselves.
Totally. And I think Alex Ramosi also said this, but he said the older you get, the less you care about people and the less you just care about things that used to be, such minuscule details about why you could be upset about something. As a teenager, you always want to fit in, you always want to do this thing. But, my grandparents, for example, they're wearing $10 shoes they found at some store. They love it because it's comfy. They don't care what other people think about it
Yeah.
because they like it themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that's all that matters. And don't you love it when people are like that too? It's so refreshing. I have a 17-year-old and he's just one of those people who really doesn't give a crap about what people think. He goes to school in these outfits. I'm just like, okay, well, if you're cool with that. But I love it. I think that it's so cool, especially for younger people, just to embrace kind of who they are and to not really care what other people think. It's so refreshing.
100%.
Yeah. So cool. Okay. And then last topic, we can just give this a couple of minutes. Passion. Food bloggers usually get into food blogging because of a passion for cooking and baking and like what we actually do in the kitchen. But over time, we seem to maybe lose it because of the business parts of, our pieces of our business. So how do we get back in touch with passion?
Yeah, 100%. I would say for passion, because a lot of people struggle to find passion. It's just trying a bunch of different things. In short, I can go into it, a huge explanation, but I'm not going to. So if you've already found your passion, I would say going along the same topic, it's even trying new things within your passion, right? Sometimes your passion might get a little bit dulled out or maybe a little bit boring because you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So why not try to tweak something, a little detail, maybe something you're blogging about, a different type of food or a different, maybe even collaborating with somebody else, just trying something else that might work for yourself. And I'm not saying it's going to work 100% of the time, but if you try different things, I am willing to bet that there will be something that you'll find more passion towards. I know for my podcast, even there have been times where it's gotten to a point where I'll think to myself, it's getting kind of tough. I remember how much I used to love doing this thing. And then I'll try something else. Maybe I'll use a new software to edit, or I'll think of an episode idea that I'm very passionate about. And this spark that was slowly, or not slowly, just very lightly dimmed has now sparked up and became this new light bulb. And it restarts the process. And what I would say to people is, I think there's a notion that passion runs out, right? If you do the same thing, it's inevitable. But I disagree, and I think that you can do the same thing over and over again and maybe get a little bit bored of it. But if you switch it up and try new things within your industry, you will find something that makes you like re-excited again.
Yeah, no, that is so true because there's so many different aspects of our business, and I can get reignited with passion just from something I'm not expecting. Like sometimes keyword research, like who would think that? But it makes me
Right.
like, ooh, this is really fun. And yeah, there are so many different ways to find that passion. So I like that. It doesn't have to be the original thing that got you started. It can be really anything.
Right. And one more thing I'm going to say is there are going to be some parts that are boring. I know even for myself, I've created a couple websites before. The SEO, the research for words, man, that is not for me. But I think it's a reminder to be grateful for the times that you do have that spark, right? So the times when you're enjoying yourself a lot are the times that you should be thinking to yourself, wow, this is awesome. I'm having a great time. And then the bad times are a reminder that the good times are to come soon.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, that's really good. I like that. Wow, Elan, this has been a fun, deep conversation. I feel like we could keep going, but I should probably wrap things up. Discipline, focus, consistency, judgment, passion. I think these are all things that we should be giving thought to and having conversations about, right? Just like with trusted peers, like how can I increase my focus or how can I be more consistent? I think it's really worthwhile to give these topics some attention.
I completely agree.
Thank you for everything. We so appreciate you joining us today. Do you have a favorite quote? You said you were a quote guy, or words of inspiration to leave us with?
We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I love it. That's one of my favorite quotes.
That's great. Super awesome. We will put together a show notes page for you, Elan. So if you want to go look at those, head to eblogtalk.com/Elan Gelfand. And that is spelled. Do you want to spell it for us and then tell people where they can find you, Elan?
Sure. So my Instagram is actually spelled the same way. So it's just my name, Elan, ELAN Gelfand, GELFAND. So in short, or I guess just to spell it out, my Instagram is ELAN.GELFAND. And the same thing for your show notes. That's why I mentioned that.
Yeah. And then Abundant Thinking is your podcast. So everyone go check that out as well. And then I didn't ask you, do you do mainly interviews or do you do solo episodes or both?
So I do a good combination of both. The thing is, I record so it's on my YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Pandora Music, and Amazon Music. So on Spotify and YouTube, I'm able to do video. However, the majority, I would say, are solo, like just me talking. And then there are a couple of guests that I throw on there that kind of have to do with, topics of mindset, confidence coaches, etc.
Awesome. Everyone go check that out. And thanks again, Elan, for being here. And thank you for listening, food bloggers. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of eBlog Talk. If you are craving accountability, focus, and connection at a low monthly cost, join the eBlog Talk accountability group at eblogtalk.com/focus. I will see you next time.